Hello again, and welcome to Upgrade to Awesome. We're up to part 4. I can't believe we're really up to this already, and I'm very, very excited because we're really at the real meat. Today, we're going to learn an exciting tool and some good questions that came in. I'm going to actually start with one of the questions. So here goes. So she writes, it is clear that reminding ourselves, I'm going to read the question as somebody wrote it because it's just, they could say it so much better than I ever could. I mean, it's written so well. It's clear that reminding ourselves of our link to Hashem and being part of Hashem is a powerful way to boost our feelings of worthiness. It's even strong enough to weather what might otherwise batter against our self-image, both from the voices within as well as from people or situations we encounter. What do we do, though, to ensure that we don't accidentally emotionally isolate or numb ourselves from the people around us? If we say that self-worth and being okay with myself is directly correlated to understanding that I only want to please Hashem, how do I avoid just not caring about the opinions of my friends and family? If I put their opinions aside entirely, then what bonds me with my friends and family? How would I relate to them personally or feel connected to them? And I love this question because it's such an important one. So here's my thought on this. And again, I'm grateful for the opportunity to clarify. In an ideal situation, if somebody says something offensive to you, you should be, and I should be, and all of us should be able to say, whoops, ouch, that really hurt my feelings. And the person should respond to that and say, oh my, I really didn't mean to hurt your feelings. What was that? Tell me what's bothering you. And you would say what's bothering you. And the other person would say, oh my, because I didn't mean that. I meant that. I'm so sorry. I would never want to hurt you. That would be such a great conversation. But I see you're laughing. And I think I know why you're laughing. If I dare guess, it's because what happens, that's an ideal situation. Okay, now what ends up happening is that when we get offended, our fight or flight instinct gets triggered. And we either go on the defense mode, which is we start attacking the other person, or we retreat into self-pity and resentment and just, hiding and avoiding the other person and avoiding the confrontation, avoiding the conflict. We don't do assertiveness. We either do passive or we do aggressive, flip flop between passive and aggressive. We don't naturally be assertive. So what I think is that, and then even if we do say, oh, well, that hurt me, the other person, our telling the other person, remember the whole discussion about the labels? So when somebody tells us something upsetting or an unpleasant situation unfolds and we find ourselves sucked into or just present within a unpleasant circumstances or situation, what happens is we get a label. And as soon as we find ourselves with that label, we don't want it. And our natural instinct is to fight it off and attack the other person or sulk, retreat into ourselves. But let's say we don't. Let's say we calmly and assertively, just gently say, ouch, ouch. Now that person doesn't want to see themselves as somebody who's capable of being hurtful. Everybody wants to see themselves as a good person. So your ouch could put the other person on the defensive, and they'll be like, what? Why are you being so silly? Like, I didn't do, like, what? I didn't do anything. Like, and kind of shift the negative energy. Now, right back to, and obviously that's not the ideal situation. Everybody should be emotionally mature. We should be able to be open to criticism. We should be able to be open to sharing our feelings, on both ends. So what I think these tools that we're talking about, what we're doing here is giving ourselves a core self, a stronger core, so that inevitably, when we do bump into an unpleasant situation, we could say, ouch, without, I think that when we say ouch in a way that's relative, that's like appropriate, that parallels the pain of just the external layer. Sometimes if we don't have a strong core and somebody steps on our toes, then we look at it like they stabbed us in our heart, right? They touched us on a much deeper level. It's not just that they said something that was a little bit unpleasant. We kind of associate what they said with malicious intent, or we experience it as destructive, even if it wasn't so malicious, even if it wasn't evil, even if it wasn't intended to be destructive or hurtful in any way, even if it wasn't meant to be criticism. So if we have a strong core, two things happen. Number one, we're open to just sharing our feelings from a place of honesty without getting complicated in deep, dark stuff that has nothing to do with the present moment. Right? And that's one level of it. And the other thing is that when people, very often we're the ones who are hurting other people, because everybody is on both ends of the table, right? Sometimes we feel hurt, and sometimes by mistake we hurt other people that we love and people that we care about, just because we make mistakes. That's what humans do. So inevitably, when we do make a mistake and someone says, ouch, we'll be able to see ourselves inherently as good people, and we won't take their ouch as a reason to fall apart. We don't need to protect ourselves from our mistakes. We could just say, oh my, I am so sorry. So this is definitely not meant to replace the ideal situation where we are open and connecting with other people, but rather to help us connect more deeply and more authentically and in just a more wholesome way with the people in our lives. I hope that if the person who asked the question is on the phone and you want to, if you want to speak up on the chat, that would be great. Another person is adding here that another option is to soothe our own ouch to ourselves and validate ourselves, etc. And then we can just communicate the request to the other person without a lot of a negative emotional energy. So thank you for saying that very beautifully. And that's a beautiful way of saying it, right? Because if we don't have a core self, then what ends up happening is that emotional neediness that never had anything to do with the other person. We came into the day with that hole in our heart, but the other person's criticism or the other person's hurtful comment or absence of love woke up and unplug that whole emptiness in our heart, and we respond from that deep place of hurt, not from that little bit of what they did. So this gives us that ability to just relate from a healthy place of strength and dignity and sense of worthiness, and definitely to be able to communicate and to receive love and to share love and connect authentically with the people in our lives, the people that we want to have relationships with. And with that, let's jump into the worksheets. And then we have another question that we'll leave for afterwards. Okay, so last week we talked about the das, how doing the das, which means really taking time. Let me backtrack a little bit more. We were talking about how the more we value Hashem, the more we value our internal worthiness, our inherent worthiness and dignity and identity, right? Because the more we value Hashem, the more we value the part of Hashem that's within us. And the more respect we have for that, the more space we give to it, the more space it takes up in our mind and hearts, the more space our inherent worthiness and dignity takes up in our minds and heart. So how do we get there? How do we increase and upgrade the sense of value that we have for Hashem and for our godly soul, for our neshama, for the part of Hashem within us? How do we upgrade and expand and enrich and magnify our sense of value for that inherent, untouchable and unchangeable identity? And the way to do that, the Baal Tanya says, is through the act. I'm calling it an act. It's an act that we do in our minds of da'as, taking time to think about Hashem, and not just in a way of not to take those ideas that we know about Hashem and actually personalize them. So for example, we did last week a worksheet where like, okay, we're thinking about Hashem. Hashem is the one and only power. And then the das part of it would be looking around our lives at the different blessings that we have and saying, whoa, thank you, Hashem, for this particular blessing. You are the one who gave me this. You are the one who created this. You are the one who's making this possible. And by the same token, looking around at the unmet needs in our lives, the holes that we still need to fill, the neediness that we have, and or the pain, and recognizing, Hashem, this is from you, and turning that into a prayer to Hashem. So that was an example of what we did on last week's worksheet, where we build that bridge from the abstract. When we do that, when we personalize those ideas, suddenly they're no longer abstract theories about Hashem, but they're actual realities, practical and relevant in our own personal lives. And every time we do that, we increase our emotional charge, the emotional energy that we experience around our thoughts about Hashem and about our neshama. So there's another little worksheet that we're going to do about that, which is page 2 of today. And it's another practice, another variation of how we can do the das in relation to Hashem's empowerment of us. Hashem has infinite, unlimited value. Hashem's capabilities are limitless. So Hashem's presence within us gives us infinite and unchangeable value. What does that look like? What does that value mean in terms of our emotional wellness? It could mean anything. It means respectability, dignity, compassion, resilience, courage, acceptance, tolerance, faith, trust, strength. It could mean anything. One thing I do not want this to ever mean is that you're capable of tolerating and perpetuating a toxic, abusive relationship. I had a very painful experience recently where somebody shared that she was in a very abusive relationship, and I really felt sad that she thought she could handle it because people around her were minimizing her pain. And here I was talking about, empowerment, and we can do it. And I was so happy that she asked me that question and gave me the opportunity to clarify that our bodies, our lives don't belong to Hashem. In Yiddishkeit, in Torah, there's no such thing as a bill of rights. There's only obligations. We have an obligation to take care of ourselves because we don't belong to ourselves. We cannot, just like we would never let anybody beat up our child, we can't let anybody beat us up emotionally, psychologically, physically. We can't let people beat us up. We should not put ourselves into situations where we will be hurt. None of this is meant to perpetuate abuse. And if you're not sure if your situation is what I'm talking about, then just ask, okay? So I just wanted to put that out there. But for every regular, ordinary situation, and I think emotional abuse has been so expanded, it could mean, somebody's in a bad mood and we call that abusive, you know what I mean? Everything is about frequency, intensity, and duration, but we're not gonna diagnose what is technically or what is authentic abuse and what is not. I think if you have a question, it's always helpful to ask. But if you don't have a question, and this is just regular conflict and inner turmoil and confusion and doubt, or if you want to do something and you have fears related to your past trauma, or inhibitions, or you're stuck to a habit and you want the courage to defy that habit, or you want to love somebody but something is getting in your way, or you want to be more patient and accepting and you want that compassion. All of that inner wealth we can get just by doing the das. So let's take a moment to practice absorbing what this could look like. Okay, so let's say I'm in a situation. I need to make a difficult phone call. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be unpleasant. Why is it going to be uncomfortable? Because the person on the other end of the call is going to be upset. I have to deliver unpleasant news. And although there's nothing I could do about it, the facts of the news are the facts, and the person on the other end of the phone call is not going to be happy. But I have to deliver this news because it's my job, right? I'm the position. That person is waiting for an answer to a question, and I'm the one who needs to deliver that piece of information. So what form of inner wealth? That's just an example that I'm using. If we want to do another one, we'll do another one, okay? So what form of inner wealth do I need from Hashem today, here and now? I need some strength. I need some strength. I also need some compassion, because I want to have the strength to say clearly what needs to be said. And I also want to have compassion to say it kindly. So which action can I take to demonstrate this quality? I can speak clearly and use kind, and be supportive at the same time. Number 3, what am I choosing as my perspective in this situation? I am choosing to believe that this phone call can actually be, it could happen calmly with dignity and compassion. It doesn't have to be a mess. It doesn't have to be awkward. It doesn't have to be, a terrible thing in my day. This is going to happen with strength, dignity, and compassion. It's going to be fine. Okay, that's what I would like to believe. Number 4, what will I do to help myself hold on to this perspective? What will I do when I lose my perspective? So frankly, if I'm going into a situation and I think I might lose my perspective, I will try to write it down before I make that phone call or before I go into a situation, because for me, writing gives me clarity. But that's just my own personal example. And in your example, when you do this worksheet for yourself, it will probably be something different. What will I try to notice? Where will I focus my attention in this situation? So if I have to deliver specific news, right? The reason why I ask this question is because where we focus our attention is so important. If I'm going to be focused on the discomfort of the other person, if all my energy is going to be invested in how uncomfortable the other person is and how uncomfortable that makes me, I will just perpetuate the discomfort. But if I could focus my attention on the end goal, where after we get through this conversation, things will be clear. And with that clarity comes just peace. That's going to be my focus of my attention, getting to a place of peace, helping that person get to a place of peace with this situation. What is my tefillah to Hashem about this situation, about myself and others in this situation? I love this question because of 2 things. First of all, it helps me. Once I say a tefillah, it takes my fears or my uncertainty and it gives it a voice that's much more clear than the muddled mess of my words that keep churning around and around in my head. If I say it as a tefillah, it becomes more clear to me and it's crystallized in clarity. Number 1. Number 2 is it helps me also focus my energy on the goal as opposed to staying in the discomfort. So it's just another way of doing the same thing. I will ask Hashem to give me the strength and to give me the compassion and to give the other person the open heart and mind so that together we can work out the situation and come to a place of peace about this. Asking myself these questions helped me realize that inviting Hashem into the story really helps me make a big difference from a conversation that would be awkward and uncomfortable, that I would need to push off 10 times because I can't take it and I need to, I'm so afraid of it and I hate it so much that I'm going to push it off 10 times, right? Feel like I can't do it. All of a sudden, by asking myself these questions, I realized that I could do it and Hashem gives me the strength to do it. And with that, and that's why I call this worksheet Das, practicing Das, because asking ourselves these questions takes the infinite empowerment of Hashem, the power of choice, as well as all the inner strengths and the qualities that we want, and puts it into context of an actual situation where we need it. if anybody wants to give me an example that we can work with together, that would be something, I mean, that would be nice. If anybody wants to, you want to think of an example that you want to use this with? Thank you so much. Okay, let's go on. So now we're talking about doing das. Another way that we can do das in a very, very simple, straightforward way is I came up with a little list for ideas that we can do throughout the day. Sometimes people say, you know, I think about Hashem and it doesn't do anything for me. I think about my neshama and it doesn't do anything for me. And everyone who's here in this group, you've heard this from me 100 times before, right? It doesn't do anything for you the first time. But the more we spend time thinking about Hashem, the more emotional energy we create around Hashem's reality and around Hashem's value and around the value of our neshama. So Yiddishkeit actually works. Yiddishkeit is built in a way to allow for little pockets of time throughout the day to like touch base, to reaffirm and reconnect and recharge our awareness of Hashem's reality, of our awareness of Hashem's truth, and our empowerment to choose. And that is, you know, morning, afternoon, evening tefillos, and saying a bracha before eating, saying a bracha after eating, touching the mezuzah whenever you're walking into the room, giving a little bit of tzedakah every single day. All of these actions spread throughout the day are like little lights, little lights that we kind of turn on in our hearts and in our minds, little lights of consciousness, little sparks of strength, actual strength that builds charge and builds energy around our awareness of Hashem and our the emotional impact of that awareness. So if you take one thing out of this course, out of this series, I would so much love if you do this. Take 30 seconds every single day to proactively charge up your consciousness of Hashem's truth and of the truth of your neshama. And doing that consistently over a period of time, even after just 1 week, will invite so much goodness in your life, because then when you think about Hashem, all of a sudden, all that energy will come up for you. So on the next 2 pages, I have a bunch of ideas of just basic ideas to get you started, but don't be limited by these ideas. I'll just read the first 2. Number 1 is to say moda'ani with intention and personal thought. So we say moda'ani, this tefillah said immediately when we wake up, right? Sometimes we're so used to saying it. For those of us who are blessed, have been saying it from when we're young. It's like so part of us that it just, you know, kind of is like, just like, it's like almost like opening your eyes. You say moda'ani and you don't even realize that it was just said. It kind of mumbles itself out of our mouths while we need toothpicks to keep our eyes open, right? But it doesn't have Hashem's name, and you can say it anytime. You can say it an hour after you woke up as well. Anytime you remember that, you know, before you start your day, it's a great idea to really say moda'ani when you're conscious, when you're alert, when you're have the focus and the clarity of mind to really think about what you're saying. And I would really recommend sitting down once when you have a few minutes, maybe now or right after this call, and take a moment to think about what the words of moda'ani mean to you in your words. What do you want to remember as you say the words moda'ani? And then think about it, you know, write it down, and you'll have it, you'll be able to reference it every morning. It's so precious. It's so empowering. It's one of the most simple things. And sometimes people say, oh, come on, it's so simple, it can't be effective. My problems, my life is so much more complicated than that. But it actually works. It's so simple that it almost seems impossible to actually make a difference. But these 30 seconds done over a week even, and certainly over a longer period of time, makes a huge difference. There's probably nothing in my day that makes a bigger difference than a simple moda'ani or Shema Yisrael or a simple bracha that I say throughout the day. Just that few seconds of intention and awareness of what I'm actually saying and personalizing those thoughts makes such a big difference. So moda'ani, here's a sample thought. Moda'ani means I admit. When we wake up in the morning, it seems as if Hashem is not there. It seems as if Hashem is abstract when the world around us is so real. And Hashem's presence is almost a theory in comparison to all the relevant stuff that's on my agenda. So we right away say, Moda'ani, I acknowledge, I admit that you are true. And that brings us to the second meaning of the words Moda'ani. I thank you. I am grateful to you. Because once we realize that Hashem is true, we also feel a sense of gratitude, because if he is true, then he is the source of all the good in my life, beginning with the fact that I am alive. If he is true, then he's the source of my life. So Moda'ani, I admit that you are true. I thank you. Lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Right then, we're affirming Hashem is living and eternal. Shechazarta bi nishmasi. You returned to me my life, my beautiful life, your beautiful light. To be carried by it throughout the day and to carry it with me wherever I go and whatever I do. With rachamim. You gave it to me with mercy. There's nothing that I did that's so amazing that I deserve this light. I didn't even ask for it. You're giving it to me as a gift. And then Rabba Emunasecha, we express our thanks that great is your faithfulness. Great is your faith in me. Thank you, Hashem, for trusting me. Thank you for giving me another day. Thank you for trusting me that I will do this day with joy, dignity, and compassion, that I will be a meaningful carrier of your light wherever I go and whatever I do today. So that's one thought about Moda'ani. The paragraph of Elakaina, I'm curious, if you want to share, if anybody wants to share something that you think about when you say Moda'ani. We're not going to go through all of these because in the interest of saving time, but the next 2 pages are a list. And that brings us to, first of all, I want to just say my favorite thing is on the second page of these proactive connections is turning a sigh into a song, or turn a sigh into a prayer and turn a song into a prayer. Every time throughout the day, when you're happy and you feel like singing, when something is going right, say thank you to Hashem. Make it into a song of thanks. And when you're feeling afraid or worried or anxious or nervous in any way or overwhelmed, turn it into a prayer. So empowering and it's so comforting and reassuring when you're able to crystallize those words. And instead of saying, I'm so worried or I'm so afraid, or this is so crazy and it's so overwhelming, Hashem, please make this work out. Hashem, please heal this person. Hashem, please help me, give me the strength I need to get through the next few minutes with dignity, with my patience intact. Okay, and the other thing that I really love here is being a light. It's so nice to consciously carry Hashem's light as a light to other people, at least once a day. Consciously reflect on the value and the beautiful light that the people in your life are carrying, and engage to that with that person from the place of that awareness, even once a day. Okay, this brings us to the next page, which is something that I call the power tool. For those of you who have been with me before in previous workshops, I've had different tools. I called it focus, and that was really focused on kind of separating our beliefs and really like taking them apart and identifying what's not true from what is true. This one is easier to use and doesn't get so technical and specific. I'm very grateful to Dr. Hilary Buff. She's a clinical psychologist. I created this together with her. We did a workshop together, and this was, so she has a part in it, and that's why I wanted to mention her name here. Okay, so the power tool is also a form of doing DAS, but it's a very simplified process. And I want to just share the background for why this is helpful and when this is helpful. Remember that story that we shared about Khani going down the stairs and having this belief about herself that she was somewhat shameful because her skirt was dirty, and then the neighbor ignored her, and then she really felt embarrassed and ashamed of herself because she was being ignored because of her skirt. That's what she thought. So we talked about how in that story, Khani would have never known that, she would have never challenged her beliefs, because our brain doesn't come to us with suggestions of what to believe. Do you want to believe that the other person was ignoring you, or do you want to believe that the other person was busy? Which idea works better for you? Our brain doesn't come to us with that. Our brain comes to us with certainty. She was ignoring you because you are absolutely shameful, because you're disgusting, because because you deserve to be ignored. You do not deserve to be acknowledged and recognized. That's why she was ignoring you. So our brain doesn't come to us with suggestions. It comes to us with certainty. This is how it is. And being that that's the case, if we turn on the light of awareness and we challenge our thoughts on a regular basis, and we kind of question, wait, is that idea true? Is it consistent with the truth of Hashem's power? Is it consistent with the truth of my dignity and my absolute worthiness? Is it something that I want to live by? Does it make any sense for my life? So in order for us to get to that point of asking that question, my recommendation is that whenever you're feeling upset or emotionally overwhelmed, pull out this power tool. And what this power tool will do will help you turn on the light of your awareness and at least get you to that point where, if you've been doing the das, if you've been really thinking about Hashem and living with Hashem, the minute you will put on the light of awareness, you will be in the light. You will see that belief that was hurting you will be exposed for the lie that it is. Let's go through this. I'm going to share an example as we go through it, and then we'll open up to questions. Okay. So it's a form of doing das as a simple process. We're respectable. We're empowered to choose our beliefs and our behavior. But when our emotions are fired up, we lose sight of that dignity, and we lose sight of our ability to choose our beliefs. We just feel stuck in our messy emotions. We feel stuck in that self-pity, in that resentment, in that helplessness, in that misery, in that overwhelm. So that's when we can use this tool, pull it out of your pocket, and the acronym really helps because it makes it memorable. And we could use it to reconnect and just re-ground ourselves. Is that even a word? It's not. Re-anchor ourselves within a position of strength and wholesome dignity. So the P is for pause. And that's the most important part of this all. We want to stop wherever we are, literally stop moving, take a deep breath, and put our feet on the brakes. And literally, that's figuratively, but literally put your feet into the ground. If you're sitting, you might put your hands on your knees, and your brain will therefore understand that you are safe. Okay, we're gonna dial down that hyperactive fight or flight mode, that fight or flight instinct. We're just gonna be calm. And I wanna say that sometimes this pause takes 30 seconds, and sometimes just you need to breathe, deep breathing for more than that, for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and just keep telling yourself, you are safe, I am safe, I am okay, okay? Then we wanna do, that's P. P is for pause. Just, sometimes you see a yellow light. A yellow light is supposed to mean pause, but whenever we see a yellow light, we kind of speed. We go through it very, 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 very quickly. I think that sometimes when we get nervous and we get anxious, instead of slowing down, we speed up. What we want to try to do is really, the minute you become aware that I am in emotional overwhelm, I am feeling sorry for myself, I am feeling resentful, I am feeling anxious, the first thing is pause. Okay, slow down, get your feet onto the floor, or put your, if you're not near a chair, you lean against the wall, and let your feet sink into the ground. Feel that weight of your feet in the ground, and take a deep breath. And then O is for observe. Okay, now that we're calm, we could actually, the first thing we want to do is look at what's going on in your heart and in your mind. What am I feeling? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? So I was feeling very upset one day this week. And I want to just share that I did this tool. I paused and I observed, what am I thinking and what am I feeling? And a whole bunch of mumble jumble stuff was coming up for me. And then I asked myself a more specific question. I asked myself, what label are you wearing? Because for me, labels make a big difference. And some people don't really relate to this idea, but for me, labels really matter. And sometimes when I ask myself, what label am I wearing? I kind of zoom in on, I saw myself, I realized that I was seeing myself as a failure for something that had happened. And I was like, failure, liar, liar, because like here I am presenting myself to the world as a normal person. And here I just did something that was, I was in a situation that was not normal. So I'm a liar. And the second I had that observation, which I didn't have before, because when you're busy, you don't even realize that you have these thoughts going on in your head. You don't even realize, you're not even listening, paying attention to the emotions that are churning in your heart. You're kind of just doing. But when you pause, you slow down and you take that deep breath and you consciously observe, hey, what are you feeling? What's going on? And I was like, okay, I'm just in pain. I'm like, okay, so, well, what label are you wearing? Failure, loser. And the minute I said that, it was like, we do the W is welcome. Welcome Hashem into the story. I right away moved into the welcome Hashem into the story. And that means literally, figuratively, let Hashem into the story. Everything you know about Hashem, let it take up some space right here in this minute, in the context of your label, failure, loser. What does that look like when you bring Hashem into the picture? And I was like, oh, my mama was almost laughing out loud. I was like, okay, you're not a failure. You're not a loser. This is a difficult situation and you're actually doing great. I was able to talk myself through that moment because just welcoming Hashem into the picture, welcoming all that I know about Hashem into the picture was like turning on the light of awareness. And we want to, it's not just welcoming Hashem, it's a conscious connection to all that we know about Hashem. And then envision, E is for envision. This is really helpful. Envision that unstoppable flow of light. If the welcome didn't do it for you yet, W and E really go together. You want to welcome Hashem and not just welcome Hashem into the story, but literally envision the flow of light, that beautiful, majestic, forceful flow of unstoppable flow of beautiful light coming straight from Hashem into you. Envision it filling your body, filling your whole space, filling yourself, Hashem handing it into your hand, however you want to envision it. Sometimes I envision it as a certificate of worthiness, identity, and dignity. Whatever works for you, visualize it. So P is for pause. Tell yourself that you're safe and put yourself in a physical position that will remind you of that safety, that will tell your body that you're safe. So to dial down that hyperactive fight or flight instinct, breathe deeply, getting oxygen into your body really just brings you to a state of calm. And from there we do O, which is observing what's going on inside of you, your emotions, your beliefs. Welcome Hashem into the story. Envision Hashem's empowerment of you. And then from that place, make a choice. R is for resolve. Resolve how you want to engage. Resolve to engage in the situation from the place of your inner light, from that place of awareness of Hashem's truth and the truth of your dignity and precious identity. So you're not the same person. I'm telling you, when you do this, literally from being overwhelmed and a confused mess, when you slow down and observe your thoughts and put those thoughts in context of everything you know about Hashem and his empowerment of you, you're not the same person as you were a few seconds before you use the tool, because you now have awareness, and awareness is everything. If you're walking down a path in the dark, you will stumble, you'll trip, whatever's on the floor will be an obstacle in your path. But with the light on, you see where you're going, and you could either walk around the pit, or you jump over it, or you could stuff it up and repair it and fix it and actually heal it. There's so much you can do. There's so many possibilities. You're not hurting yourself anymore. Awareness is really everything. So from that place of awareness, we can choose. We can choose what we believe. We can choose how we want to see ourselves, how we want to engage in the situation. And literally that makes all the difference. So P for pause, O, observe, welcome Hashem's truth, envision Hashem's empowerment of you, and then resolve to engage in the moment from, or in that situation from the place of his empowerment of you. And the same tool can be used. We spoke before about Moda'ani. Use the same tool in the morning with your Moda'ani. P, pause before you do anything in the morning, before you open your phone, before you speak to anyone, before you take care of any business, before you plan mentally what you're going to do throughout the day. P, just pause. Take that moment to consciously become aware of Hashem's presence. Observe, make a commitment. If you want to look around, observe here. We're not going to start observing our thoughts in the morning, but maybe observe your blessings. Observe the fact that Hashem is present in your world. Make a commitment to keep switching on the light of awareness, and make a commitment that today, whenever your thoughts are not elevating you, you will challenge them. You will turn on the light of awareness and take a closer look at what you're believing, and then welcome the truth of your neshama into your day, envision it, and resolve to engage in this day from the place of that awareness, strength, and dignity. And that is absolutely my favorite tool. And let's open to questions before we conclude. Here's a really good question. Okay. Okay, how do we authentically show up when we are faced with interacting with difficult people, exhibiting behaviors, beliefs, and attitudes where there is another level of distorted thinking and destructive, irrational behavior that could be indirectly or directly intended for us as the recipient? In other words, what do you do when you're dealing with toxic behaviors, like real intense, real certified, I will call it disorders, such as people who might have a psychological diagnosis of a personality disorder? For example, is there room for a clinical lens in which Judaism views people and human behaviors? What about when the tactics employed by an individual, whether conscious or not, are manipulative and spiteful, fueled by rage, not just anger, and possibly severe resentment as a likely cover for fear and shame? Okay, when the thoughts and actions exhibited have potential for risk or harm to self or others. These are really such beautiful words that give such a vivid description of what every person here is likely to encounter. And then she explained her question again. Really, it's a two-part question. Number one is, what do we do when we're dealing with people who have all these disorders, or any of these disorders, a real toxic, diagnosable, as she described? And the second part of the question is, does Judaism even allow for viewing people within the framework of psychological pathology? Such a fantastic question, both of them. So I feel like we, when dealing with difficult people, including ourselves, all that we've been describing is very, very helpful. I just think that it's important to keep in mind that we're never obligated to put ourselves in a, not that we're never obligated, we're not allowed to put ourselves in a position of danger. We're not allowed to. So I don't want to say, because people, I think the label of borderline personality disorder or this kind of personality, so many ABCs are thrown around and everybody is diagnosing everybody without even seeing them. And there's a very big difference between clinically evaluating a person and giving a diagnosis after a certain, due process, as we will say, as opposed to, everybody reading an article in a magazine or reading a book and saying, oh, that person has this disease and that person has this, and everybody, we're busy diagnosing everybody. So that's why I'm very hesitant to say, come out strongly and say, toxicity is wrong and don't put yourself up for abuse, because you know what? So many times we make the mistake of calling people or things or behaviors or certain things abusive, and they're not. And so many times we make the mistake of normalizing what's really abusive. So that's why I don't want to make any definitive statements about what to do specifically in terms of real abusive situations. I really think it's a very personalized question. But for all regular behaviors, these tools are, I think they're very, very helpful. They've been helpful to me. They keep me in a position of strength and sanity, even when there's so much insanity and chaos. It keeps me in a place of peace, even when there's chaos and confusion surrounding me. So that was number one. Number two is, does Judaism even allow for viewing people with within the framework of psychological pathology? To me, psychological pathology is just like any illness. And I don't think that there's anything wrong. Like, just like you would say, oh, this person has a broken leg. Okay, this person, this system doesn't work. You know what I mean? Medically, there's definitely reason to say that, in other words, a pathological illness is illness. It's illness, just like physical illness. There's mental illness, and there's doctors who treat that just like, so yeah, I would say that yes. However, that being said, how do we look at people? Do we look at people as their illnesses, as their strengths, or do we look at people first and foremost as people? And I really strongly believe, and I am sure you will all agree with me on this, that there is nothing more definitive about a person than their soul. And when we relate to a person from the position of that awareness and of that clarity, then the person happens to be he's a person or she's a person, happens to have ADHD, happens to have, borderline personalities, but they're a person first. They're a person first, they're a soul first, they're dignity first, they have worthiness first. They're not defined. None of us are defined by anything other than our neshama. And we get to show up from the place of our neshama. And even if we ourselves are struggling with mental illness or emotional challenges, or even just getting into a rut of weakness or of a lot of people that I know are struggling with, over the last few months with depression and anxiety and a whole new level of intensity that people didn't experience before Corona. There's so much fear in the air that people are sucking it up and drinking it for breakfast, lunch, and supper. It's the Kool-Aid, and it's in our coffee, and so I really don't want anybody, like we shouldn't judge ourselves. And we're never, ever limited or defined by anything else. Just like we're not limited or defined by how much money we have, what kind of clothing we're wearing, or, anything external. I would say that dealing with an emotional challenge, psychological challenge, mental challenge is 100% goes in the same category as anything else. It's not something that we cause, where there's no shame. It's a blessing. Every day of sanity is a blessing. And if we have a day of sanity, and we have to just keep asking Hashem for it to continue, because it really, 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 it's a blessing like any other. So I hope that answers your question. Anybody want to jump in? I really feel that before doing this work, if somebody would criticize me, I would be so into defending myself, that I wouldn't actually listen with an open heart and mind. But because my identity is taken care of, their criticism is not taking away who I am. Their criticism or their needs or their complaints about me are not threatening to me. They're not, because it's not threatenable. That's not a word, right? But you know what I mean? It's unshakable. So then I'm not feeling threatened. I'm secure. So then I could just listen. And I think that's what you shared and what you just said. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Wow, I didn't, yeah, you're right. I didn't do well in that. I'm so
Right.
sorry. But that was like, okay, it was something that you couldn't do in that person. But let's say, I was rude. I actually was rude. I shouldn't, I didn't think
Right.
before I spoke. And who are we rude to? Usually our children, our husbands, our siblings, the people that we really care about and we just feel so comfortable with, that we just don't think, and we could afford to be somewhat rude, and obnoxious at times. Let's just forget about it, whatever. We give ourselves permission to do that. I'm not saying that it's right, but none of us are perfect. And I still think that two things, I would sometimes feel so horrible about myself that I would just I would just get into a bad mood, which would then just be which wouldn't be helpful to anyone. Um, and another thing is, like, I would be I couldn't see myself as doing something bad. So I kind of would, well, if that person wouldn't have been so obnoxious first, then I wouldn't have been so obnoxious after. They made me, they were being so rude. This teenager was talking to me with such rudeness. Of course I was going to get upset. It was inevitable. I mean, how could a person be? That's what I would think. And I kind of would feel self-righteous and indignant, rightfully indignant, and I would not apologize. I didn't really, in order to take real responsibility for our choices, we need to take real ownership of our value. The more we value ourselves, the more ownership we feel for our power of choice. It's literally because our value is our power of choice. Because I have value, that's why I'm capable of choosing. To the extent that I have value, that's the extent that I have the power of choice. So I keep talking about, yes, the person being victimized, because I think that at the beginning of this journey for anybody, that's the starting point. But you have been with us for a long time already, my dear. And so you're really up to the next stage, which is, okay, so now I'm done with that. Now, what about me? That already, obviously the
Thank
work,
you.
I still do the work every day. The work is infinite
Every
because our
day.
souls are infinite. And Hashem, in his infinite kindness, always gives us new possibilities and new mountains to climb. You get to the top of the mountain, what you thought was the top of the mountain, and then you realize there's a whole nother mountain to climb. You learn more, you grow, you have deeper insight, more awareness. There's more, your capacity for pain grows, your capacity for self-pity also grows, and your capacity for joy grows. I think that that's part of, growing up. So yeah, but when you're starting this journey, you're not thinking of yourself as the perpetrator. You're thinking of yourself as the victim. Most of us, we think of ourselves as the victim, not as the perpetrator. So
Sure.
that's why I always start from that. But you're 100% right. But all of this, it works exactly the same way for the same. Yeah, but thank you so much for bringing that up. I want to recommend, what we're doing now is a very lovely group, but because it's so diverse and it's so big and it's so open and kind of anybody could join at any time, inherently there's not enough emotional safety in this space, which we tried to create, but it's not 100%. If you could do a small group, if you can create in your community, on your block, in your neighborhood, or with a group of friends, if you could do this workshop series, go through the worksheets or go through the book as a group, just read a couple of minutes and go through it, share, discuss, hash it out. I would recommend, if you're starting a group with people who haven't been here for the first time, start with principle number 2, the in the book. I don't remember what page it is, but it's about Shema. Because a lot of times people who have no awareness and they're doing this kind of work for the first time, the whole idea about belief seems so abstract and so, almost esoteric, even though it's so not. But if people who have never done any emotional work or any awareness at all, it's good to start from the second pasuk, which is the second part of the book. And yeah, it gives you a gift, a safe space, because if you have a group of 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, even 10 people that come together, first of all, you're going to see you develop a sisterhood. I know of quite a few groups who have done this and who are doing this with tremendous, tremendous blessing for everybody who is involved, beginning with the person who arranges it all. And it's a work, it's a job to arrange it, but the blessings that come out of it and the goodness that comes out of it is is worth it. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a good Chodesh, a Chodesh Adar. It's a time of joy. And last year, this time, we did not know what was coming. And it was not a joyous time by the end of the month at all. And my prayer really to Hashem is that before this Purim, let it be that this year, within this year, we should celebrate Purim together with all our loved ones and in a state of utter joy, real transformation, with no masks and no uncertainty and no confusion and no chaos, and just pure revealed goodness with Mashiach. It should really happen way before Purim. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing Mordechai and Esther on Purim, along with, all the people that we lost, that we love.